At 10:30, it was time for my second round of stretch and folds, and I'm really happy with how well things are going so far. Started with just plain stretch and folds for now. These went on for about 3 or 4 minutes just so I could make sure that my dough was on the right track. Stretched as far as I could, and then just folded over. Finished up with just a few coil folds so I could start getting my dough to kind of like shape into a ball. I have found that honestly does help it a little bit, so that is what I try to do. When I was done, it looked nice and domed and ready for another 30-minute rest. Around 10:30, it was time for my next set, and the dough is already looking a little bit better, kind of holding its shape, got nice and good bubbles. I'm happy. Started once again with stretch and folds, and I will lead into coils. But you can already see like the dough is a little bit more resistant because it's getting stronger as we go, and it's still nice and airy, and that brings me great joy. Add in a few coil folds just to help the dough form into an appropriate ball, but like look at that spring back. I love it. Things are going well so far. After our coils, it's looking nice and shapely, good and jiggly. I am happy, so it's time to cover up and wait for our very last set. At 11:30, it was time. So I uncovered my dough, and honestly, I'm super happy with how nice it looks. It's holding its shape pretty well, and it's got lots of good bubbles. So I do my stretch and folds to start. Stretch the dough as far as I can, fold it over, and honestly, I'm doing my best to try and keep some of that air in there so it stays nice and light and fluffy, and I'm just super happy with how things are going so far. Do a few coils at the end just to build up some last minute resistance, but super happy with how things look so far. That was the last of my stretch and folds, so now that the dough is done, I'm going to cover and let it rest to continue bulk fermentation for hours. I checked it for the first time around 2:30, and honestly, I was kind of hopeful at that point, but it wasn't quite pulling away from the sides like I think it should. So I decided to give it a little bit more time just to kind of bulk ferment a little bit. Checked again around 3, and there's some bubbles on the top and on the sides. And so I did a poke test and honestly did really well, and I almost thought this was going to be it, but then when I was pulling away from the sides, it was still kind of sticky in some places, and so I decided that maybe this wasn't quite right yet. Close to 4, I decided I was happy with how it was kind of tacky. This is with dry hands, and it wasn't really sticking to me that much, and it was pulling away from the bowl nicely, and I was kind of worried that if I left it any longer that it was going to start like webbing and be overproofed. So I decided to go ahead and flour my clean countertop to get ready for shaping, and then to add my inclusions to one of the loaves. As I was going through this clip to see what I wanted to cut out, really nothing, because this was probably the cleanest the dough has ever come out of my bowl. This is the first time I've used a glass bowl, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but honestly, I was just so happy. This was amazing. Once my dough was on my countertop, it was a little sticky, but honestly not the stickiest I've ever had, and it's just so like soft and fluffy, and like honestly I could not be more elated. I did split it in half so that I could keep one dough as a plain sourdough and the other as my loaf with inclusions for the first time. So again, we'll still see how that happens. Went ahead and shaped my regular plain loaf. I remembered to flour my banneton at the last minute, but that's fine. At least I remembered. Added it to my basket. Made sure to like kind of close it up a little bit. Getting a little sticky, which is interesting, but you know, we'll see what happens. I remembered to flour my other banneton before I did the shaping on the other dough. So like, you know, little victories. And with this one, it was time to add in some inclusions. I added in sprinkles and white chocolate chips because that sounded yummy at the time, and hopefully it will be yummy once things bake up. I'm not really sure. I hope I did it right, so I guess we'll see how it turns out, but you know, it'll be fine, totally fine. After adding a bunch, I didn't measure, maybe I should have, I don't know, but after adding a bunch, it was time to fold everything in, and honestly it went pretty well. After I did my first fold over, I added some more sprinkles and a few more chocolate chips before rolling everything up. It honestly rolled up pretty nicely, and I didn't lose too much stuff, just a little bit out of the sides, but I wanted to make sure that I got it all in there, so I kind of just included it as I folded it under and stuff. I mean, my technique is not good, but maybe one day it will be better, and that's what I'm hoping for. I let them rest on the counter for about 15 minutes while I got busy with some stuff. They're still looking nice and jiggly and cute, so I decided that I was going to cover them up, and then they will go into the fridge for a cold proof